Welcome everybody to another episode of Life on Mars, and in this episode I will be talking to my two co-founders and partners and best friends, Xavi, who's the CTO and co-founder of the company, and Jordi, our director of operations. We'll be answering some of the questions that our community has sent us. A little while ago we published a blog post. We do it every year about the lessons learned from every year, what we learn about financials, hiring, technology, and whatnot. And this year we specifically asked that you send questions about what you want to learn about the company. Is there something that you'd like to find out a little bit more? Lore, funny stories, or learnings and whatnot, right? So we'll be answering a little bit of those questions like we did in the same episode in our Spanish edition podcast. So without further ado, I'll leave you with this episode. Let's go. Xavi, Jordi, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Well, very, very well. It's good to be here again.
Hi, Alex. Everything's fine.
Great. So to give a little bit of context to the audience in this episode, what we're going to do is to be answering some of the questions that you have sent, our community has sent to us. We recently turned 7 years old as a company, and we asked our audience to send some questions. What do you want to know about MarsBased? What things do you want to learn more about? Is it like our technological part, our finance part, how we bootstrap the company, our company culture, some internal things, hiring, firing, I don't know. And so we got a really long list of questions. We recorded a similar episode for our Spanish edition of the podcast. However, we didn't make it to not even to the 1/3 of the list. So let's see how it goes today. Without further ado, let's just start with the first question. I think it's a question for the three of us, which is, what are the 5 things? Well, people were asking a lot about what things have been surprising for us during the last 4 years. I don't know why, but it's out of the 7 years, the last 4 years, what we have learned during the last 4 years. Who wants to start?
Yeah, I can start. I guess that there are many, many things, but I would like to highlight that, well, one of the things that surprises me the most is that we have a very low rotation of developers at the company. And it's surprising because we are in an industry where there is a lot of rotation, right? Developers tend to stay in a company maybe for 1 year, couple of years. And here at MarsBased, at least, correct me if I'm wrong, but the last person who left the company did it like 4 years ago. It's more than a half of the life of the company, in fact. So it's quite surprising. Hopefully it remains this way, right? We like people staying at the company. It's wonderful. And another thing that I would like to highlight as well is that we are a company that we are constantly trying to improve things, right? And it's always, it always amazes me a bit. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, right? Because if you are constantly improving things, maybe it's because you are not doing them very well at the first place, right? But yeah, we do these company get-togethers from time to time, and we always summarize a bit the improvements that we did. And we end up always with very, very big lists of improvements, changes, and I guess it's in our DNA a bit, right?
Xavi, how are you?
Yes, as Jordi said, it's very surprising that we have that low rotation in our company. And I was trying to think, how is it? So what are the reasons that you believe that, what are the reasons behind this, Alex? Why do you think that we have so low rotation?
I mean, just to give context, so the last person to walk out of the company was Fran in September.
Yes, and he moved to
17. He went to GitLab. I mean, when you go to GitLab, it's like hats off, motherfucker. Like, it's a really good company. It's one of the leading Rails companies out there, and of course, everybody wants to work in a company like GitLab, right? So, but yeah, after that, I don't know. Like, I think in my experience, of course, we're founders of the company, so we cannot leave that easily. But as the developers, I think that a lot of them share that they were not working in the hottest startups all the time, right? So there are different kinds of developers, and I don't think that we attract the kind of developer that is working for 1 year for Glovo, and then 1 year for Typeform, and then 1 year for Skyscanner, and then 1 year for this other one, because they do all the shiny things, and they raise a lot of money, so they pay like better salaries, and I don't know. I think we don't attract these kind of people. We attract more like the kind of people that, I mean, come to think of it, I think that most of our developers are around their 40s. They're all married. They all have children. So they want to have stability. They want to be working in a strong company culture, 8 hours a day, and that's it. And like have a very good, stable work environment, right? Which I think in part is something that's very ingrained in our company culture. So yeah, that is very surprising actually. So, but
I imagine that if you want rockstars, you get rockstars, and being able to manage a team of rockstars is not that easy. So yes, I imagine that we are searching for some kind of people which have different motivations in their works, besides jumping between one company and the other one. Okay, so back to the topic that we are having about what surprised us most about our experience at MarsBased. One of the things that I think that surprised me most is that when we started MarsBased, me as the CTO of the company, I believe that one of the most important things of the company was the tech side of the company. Okay, being able to do things very, very good at the tech part, being able to, do all the automatic testing, all the code reviews, focusing on performance and so on. And with time, we have realized that maybe this is not what clients value most about SaaS. And it's more like the human thing, or our human side, what our clients value most. For example, the way that we solve conflicts inside a project, the way that we manage their expectations, their new requests, the way that we communicate, because we like to communicate often and communicate, very detailed with their own words, not trying to use very technical descriptions and definitions. And I think that this is something that they appreciate a lot, that we are not only like doing their tech stuff, but also they can trust us, and they know that we will act as their partners and not only as a developer or as a single employee. And this is something that surprises me a lot, because I think that all the companies like ours, all the consultancies, dev agencies, will need to focus a lot more in these soft skills, right? Not only the tech skills.
Yeah, now that you mention it, maybe that's also part of the reason why developers stay for that long, because we also can stay on top of things very often, or we can be very hands-on in resolving the conflicts, or being present in their day-to-day, and maybe they don't feel like a number like in a bigger company. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, there is a thing that a lot of people that I interview for hiring them to MarsBased, they appreciate a lot, and it's that you who are the person who is in charge of sales and well, not only the CEO of the company, but also in charge of sales and marketing and so on. You are also a computer engineer, and this is something that they are very surprised about it, because they say, okay, finally there is the people who is managing the business, who knows about the business and who knows what it's to be like developing code, from 8 to 5.
Even myself, right?
Yes, even Jordi knows how to do some technical stuff.
It took 7 years for you to acknowledge the fact that I'm a developer as well. So, and you have to do it in a podcast. Thank you, Xavi.
Well, but I never acknowledged this because, I didn't want you to touch any code at MarsBased. This was my responsibility.
Exactly. I remember when we created the company, and this is a bit of MarsBased lore, and I think the developers will appreciate this. You two, because you had been working together, and we were deciding what technology we were going to use for the projects, right? And you're like, Ruby and Angular. I was like, oh, but I don't know any of these two. I'm a Java developer. And you said, oh, no, you will not be coding. Like, literally, the company will go well if you don't code, if you don't touch a single line of code. Because also you didn't want to speak with people, you didn't want to travel, you didn't want to meet clients, and so somebody had to do it, right? So you forced me to be the sales guy.
Alex, you wanted to do Java with library, it was?
Yeah, correct.
Library, yes. So imagine.
We would be a very, very different company.
Yes.
For this, like circling back to the question, another thing that is, I don't know if it's like the most surprising thing, but one of the things that is surprising is the quality of the deal flow that we get, right? Even though from the very beginning, big companies have been contacting us, right? Even since like the first, second year. I mean, take it or leave it. Like some companies are bigger than others that have contacted us, right? But recently we started working for HP. Back in the day, we did the procurement process for Orange. We have done it for FC Barcelona. We have done it for Everis. We had been working for Everis for we're still working for Everis after what 2-3 years. And they contact us mostly through our website. Like these big companies find us through the website, which is really ridiculous because we're not that big. And even though we have been doing SEO since the very beginning of the company, I've been very anal about it. It's true that we don't have a huge website. We don't have a huge brand. Like, I don't know. I don't know if you didn't think about it, but like the quality of the companies coming up our way is like pretty interesting. At least the ones that come through the website, not through networking or context.
Yeah, it's quite surprising. I agree with you on that topic, especially considering that we don't have a specific marketing person at the company, dealing with all of this. At the end, you, Alex, take care of almost all the marketing, all the website changes, and yeah, it's awesome.
All right, let's go for the second question now. This is it's very topical question. Like everybody gets this question in interviews. It's like, if you had to start from scratch today, how would you do things differently, right? I think I know your answers, but I want to hear them. Who wants to start? Jordi, you want to start first?
Well, you know that my answer is a bit boring, but it's the truth, I guess. I wouldn't change many things at the company. At least not the big decisions, right? Of course, we have made mistakes in projects or in other areas of the company that I would do differently. But at the end, the big decisions, the big aspects of the company, I don't regret any of them. Otherwise, the company would be different. We wouldn't be in the place where we are right now. So yeah, I'm quite proud about the course that we have followed. So I wouldn't really change anything important. What do you think, Xavi? Would you change anything? Would you start doing live rate now?
Yeah.
No.
You could go back.
PHP. Would you do PHP this time around?
No, I wouldn't change. I wouldn't change anything. I completely agree with Jordi. I think that it's true that maybe we have taken some decisions that maybe they were not the best decisions when you take a look back, right, at the past. Mm-hmm. But even with knowing that, I believe that when we took those decisions, they were the best possible decisions that we could make with the information that we had. So yes, I don't regret anything, and I truly believe that people learn from the mistakes that they do. It's the topic that you will hear from the United States, right? Like failed often and fail soon because you will learn a lot from your mistakes. Mm-hmm. Well, you need to fail and you need to commit mistakes, because if you don't make any mistake, you're not going to be growing as a professional. And this is what we've been doing all those years. Maybe I am saying that because we haven't got any massive fuck up, right? I think that
I can think of a few though. I can think of a few, but yeah.
Yes,
Sorry,
but not like being
super
like putting in risk the company or any of our employees' positions. So we haven't had one of those situations that were like critical for us. Or maybe I didn't experience them because I am not selling, I don't need to take care about that. But I don't know, Alex, what do you think about that?
My answer is very much aligned with what you were saying. Although, we have had our share of regrettable decisions, right? Let's put it that way. You said we didn't have any major fuck ups. I remember a couple of clients not paying and they still owe us a lot of money, right? Of course, it was a calculated risk. I think that one of the best things we do is to calculate risks very well. And if we took those risks and they went wrong, it's because we could afford them, right? Not to go into too much detail, but in the early years of a company, some clients started like not paying, and then we said like, oh, we're gonna give them a little bit more of credit and whatever, so work for a few weeks more because we don't have any other projects. So and then eventually they didn't pay, right? So or they had been paying for a couple of years, and then they stopped paying out of the blue, and we lost a lot of money, but we could afford it. It's shit because that year, like especially I think it was like the third year, we didn't have profits as a company because of that. But it was a calculated decision. And other times we've taken the same thing and the same decision, and it went well. So it's a matter of calculating risk, right? Look, we're a fairly conservative company. And I think that, as you said, as you pointed out, every single time we have taken the decision with the best information that we had, right? And so I would do pretty much everything the same way that we've done it, because that would guarantee us that we arrive at the same place. And this is a very good place to be. So yeah.
That's all that matters at the end. I mean, it's impossible to predict the future. So probably if we would be back at that point, maybe we would have taken the same decision. So it's always difficult. In any case, one thing that some people asked you a few years ago, Alex, a bit related to this, is if you regretted not doing mobile development earlier at the company, right? Do you, in that moment, if I remember correctly, you said that in fact you regretted not starting earlier, right? Because at the beginning we were just a web development agency and we didn't do any kind of mobile development, right? Do you still think the same, or have you changed your mind in that sense?
Yeah, I remember when I said that. It was at an event at Makers of Barcelona, and somebody, I got questions from the audience, and one of them is like, "What's your biggest regret?" And I thought, like, back then, which would have been 2018, I think, we were starting to do mobile, right? As you said, like we started web only. And a couple of years later, a friend of mine, Laura, hired us for a project, and we did the initial consulting, and we said, okay, you can solve this problem that you have in your company with technology, yes, but it will have to be a mobile app. But we don't do mobile. And she was like, no, but you will do mobile. Like, I will hire you because I will not hire anybody else. It's got to be you, right? And it was a very interesting project. We learned a lot. We did it with Ionic, which at the time was not the best technology. But, there are several considerations here. First of all is when we started the company in 2014, it was still very, very, let's say, very interesting to go into mobile development, right? Because there were still a lot of like mobile apps and everybody wanted to have their app. It's not like nowadays that not every company develops their app right now, but back then it was very hot. It was a very hot market, and we could have developed for Rakuten. They wanted to hire us to do mobile, but we didn't do mobile, right? So in a way, yeah, I regretted it. But now, having seen the experience of development in the company with these kind of projects, that they require different kinds of developers, they require different kinds of tools, they require different kinds of processes, and I don't know. I'm not that sure right now. I think that because we've got so much deal flow in the web part, and maybe mobile is a little bit not so trendy nowadays, that I'm not that convinced right now. I might have changed my mind.
What I am sure, Alex, now is that a lot of Ionic developers are now angry at you because you have said that it was not a good technology back in the day. But well, the
second version was better though.
The second version was way better, and currently Ionic, we haven't tested the latest version, but it looks very promising. No, but this is true. Ionic was a new technology back in the day, and we were coming from other frameworks that were not as good as the ecosystem that we have right now. Okay, because I think that. Yes, the first version of Ionic was based on PhoneGap, and PhoneGap was a technology that had a lot of problems. So yes, I can understand you. But when you said that it was not a good piece of technology, I think that it was a good piece of technology, given the limitations that we were dealing with at that time that were a lot of limitations.
And the ecosystem of like plugins and stuff was not as rich as it is nowadays. Then, for the second version, if I remember correctly, Ionic, they raised money. They raised like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 millions. And then they turned it into like a real project, or more like a more solid project. Sorry, I'm not picking the best words today. But what it turned to be like let's say a project of a few people, then it became like a bigger company, right? And of course
because
now they
started,
are advancing.
Yes, they started developing their own plugins ecosystem to not rely on the whole Cordova ecosystem, which was was like sometimes you had luck and sometimes you read some pieces of software that were terribly made.
Yeah, but I remember, like, for instance, for the project, and not for this project, but I think it was the project of Aparc and Go, if I remember correctly, that we had problems with the how was it called? The
geolocation. Yes,
geolocation, right? And the plugin was not that great, and we had to kind of like work around it and to improve it manually a little bit ourselves. So all in all, I don't know if the outcome has been exactly super positive. I think it is, because we created like some really cool projects, like the ones for like a DPL or Aparc and Go. But eventually that made us take the decision of starting new mobile projects with React Native. So I don't know. We'll see in a couple of years.
Yes, we paid the fee. I think when we started, we paid the fee of not knowing enough about the whole mobile ecosystem. But
and
maybe
also,
we can.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So also, before moving on to the next question, one thing that you get to hear a lot is like, oh, if you develop in Ionic or React Native, you can use JavaScript developers for that. And it's not entirely true. I mean, my feeling is that, when you have to start tweaking like the real meat and potatoes of every project, you will need to touch the native part of mobile and not the JavaScript part. So it's not exactly true. I mean, it's improving over the years, but I think that's one of these sort of like fake truths that we have been hearing all along. But I don't know. What's your take, Xavi?
Yes, the more complex a mobile application is, the more native mobile development knowledge you need to have in order to succeed. And this happens with all the companies. If you start listening to stories about, the Airbnb, what's the most relevant one, right? That they were running on top of React Native and they wanted to change, if I remember correctly. And with Airbnb, the problem is that they found out that they were always like writing native code and they were not getting anything in exchange of using JavaScript on top of it. So they decided to get rid of the JavaScript layer. I think that, I'm speaking about the times of Ionic 2 and the first React Native applications. It's been a while since we haven't developed a mobile application with the newest version of those frameworks. Maybe those are different now, but I'm really sure that if you are developing something using a framework that it tries to run on top of another piece of software or another framework, it is true that you will need to understand what's going on under the hood in order to be successful, because you will find a lot of difficult bugs to solve. You will find a lot of situations where you will need to go and see, how is connecting your React Native application or your Ionic application to the native environment. And if you don't have knowledge about how this application is being built, how this bridge is being made between the two frameworks, it's very difficult that you can do some complex stuff. But it is true that if you are facing an application which is fairly simple, that you don't need to use that you don't have a lot of performance requirements, that you don't need to use a lot of native capabilities, like advanced things, like what you mentioned, geolocalization or geofences or things like that, then yes, I think that you can rely entirely on hybrid frameworks and they will work just fine.
Perfect. No, that's very good. Let's move to the next question, because I remember that we had a very, very good, when we recorded this in Spanish, we had very, very good answers, and that provided for a lot of debate. But what I'm liking is that we're saying similar but also different stuff in this English version, which is really cool. This is a tricky question because it said, as you're entering the 80th year, this often means big changes in a company. And I remember it's like, why the 80th year means big changes in the company? Probably because startups or companies die at the 7th year. So we made it. For now, we made it. So it's whether we are thinking about an exit from the founders, right? So how do we see ourselves and the team in the future?
Well, we created MarsBased as a lifestyle business. I think that's something that we agreed on at the beginning. And it's kind of the place where we always wanted to work in, right? So we tried to create the company this way because we were a bit tired of working on other consultancies and seeing things that were not working properly, or at least we like it, right? And we never thought of creating the company to sell it or anything. It was always because of the way we wanted to work, right? So I don't really envision a lot of changes at the company in the upcoming years, but mostly because I think that we will have to put a lot of energy into trying to keep the company as it is, right? So I think it's not changing anything is a challenge in itself, right? Because sometimes situations tend to take you to other roads or take other decisions. And I think that one of the most important challenges that we will have is how to keep the company, working as it's working right now, maybe grow a bit, but, keep the same philosophy, the same policies, the same way of working. And I think it will be difficult. It will be difficult, and it's a challenge that we will have to take, right? And so, I guess that we are not going to change much, at least in my opinion. I don't know what Xavi thinks. Maybe he wants to change everything now. And,
No.
surprises me, but...
No, I don't want to change a lot of stuff. I don't want to start a new company either, because one of the things that I think when people say, okay, are you planning to sell MarsBased or doing something different? It's like, okay, having to start all over again with a smaller team, having to do everything on your own. Whoa, it looks hard. It's like, for example, now I have a kid of 5 years old. And if you ask me, would you like to have another kid? It will be like, oh yes, I would like to, but it's a lot of effort, right, in doing it. And the same happens with MarsBased. It's like, yes, I would love to do another company focused in another, I don't know, in other technologies or like a fresh start. Yes, it will be nice, but it requires a lot of effort that maybe I am not, or I don't want to do right now. So I prefer to put all of my energy in turning MarsBased the best possible company around. And one of the cool things that Jordi said is that when we started MarsBased, it was because we wanted to create the company where do we wanted to work in, right? And this reminds me on one very important thing at MarsBased, which is when we were working for other companies, when we had some problem, we went to our bosses, we explained our problems to our bosses, and then our bosses ignored us most of the time, okay? But now we have
Not
the
always.
power.
Not
Yes,
always.
not always.
You're projecting here.
Yes, because Jordi was my boss in one of
right.
in one of my companies. So
I didn't see that coming.
That's why I said not
yes,
always,
that's why.
No,
Not always, of course.
But one of the cool things of having a company, and the reason why I tell a lot of people that starting a company is hard, but it pays off, is because you have the power to take decisions, right? And to change things. So if there is something that you don't like about your company, you have the power to change it. And this is something that maybe a lot of people who are founders of a company, they don't realize about it. And they continue doing the things the way that they were doing it because it's what it used to work. But I think that we really know that we have this power of changing things, and we do it. And for that reason, we have a lot of things that we can improve, and that we will be trying to improve in the following years.
What do you think, Alex?
From my side, there's a couple of things actually. One of them I already answered in the Spanish edition of the podcast, but I think I will also be giving something special for this one, something else that I just thought about right now. Exclusive, yeah. I mean, because we are very involved in the startup ecosystem, right? And a lot of people still think that we are a startup, and we're not. We're not a startup. We are a lifestyle business. You pointed it really well, Jordi. However, people still think that in the ABC of entrepreneurship, you create a company, you raise funds, you sell the company, and you make millions. But that's not quite the way in consultancies, right? And even though consultancies get sold, that they are not very good business, right? Because in startups, if you have a product, you have like some really cool technology or like huge teams or like very good financials, whatever. It's like a very good sale. But consultancies, unless you're a really big player and you're dominant in a market or a technology, you will not get sold. I mean, nobody's gonna get us, nobody's gonna acquire us for our clients. Much respect to our clients, but I think a lot of the clients we work for, other companies work for, right? Even if we work for HP, a lot of companies work for HP. It's not like they will acquire us to work for HP. And that's one. The second thing is maybe they want to acquire us for our team, and that would be very legit. That would be very valid because our team is fantastic. It's phenomenal. We got really good developers, and it's very expensive to find developers. And sometimes other companies buy companies because of their teams, right? In that sense, exits for service-based companies are not very good, are not as ludicrous as, we will not be selling the company for 100 million or a billion. It would be something much, much more modest. And so I'd rather have, long story short, I'd rather have a revenue-based company and have very profits at the end of the year, very nice profits at the end of the year, than potentially a very good sale in a few years' time. So that's the new part of the answer. But the other part of the answer is the what I said and I probably shared this story a couple times already in other events. But when 3 years ago, client of ours wanted to acquire us, right? Or we initiated talks. We didn't even want to know, but a client of ours said like, "Hey, would you be interested in selling and merging your company with ours?" And we were like, "Wow, we don't know, but we'll take the meeting, right?" Because we didn't know the protocol back then. We were just, first company. We were like only 3 years into the company. That was our biggest client, so definitely we didn't want to say no right away because maybe that meant stop working for them, right? And well, so basically, with a good friend of mine, we did a couple sessions of like, hey, what's the protocol here? So what do we have to say? What should we say? Should we go to the meeting? Yes, no. Should we go all the 3 founders and we took the meeting with the client. And I remember that by the end of the meeting, I mean, it was also rushed up, but we didn't have enough time to prepare, the 3 of us, right? And at the end of the meeting, I remember that we walked, I don't know, 50 meters out of the office, the client's office. Maybe not
less,
far.
I think.
Not far
maybe
enough.
Just 10 meters or something like that.
Maybe we started discussing this in the elevator. And I remember I asked you we're not going to sell, but if we sold, what would we be doing in 5 years' time, right? Because there's this permanence clause, and you got to stay in the company that acquires you for a while, maybe 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, I don't know, depends on the offer, right? And I don't remember who of you two said the same company, right? The same kind of company. And I said, okay, then let's not sell, because what's the point, right?
Yes, I think it was Jordi saying that.
Probably.
I remember Jordi, and it fits him.
It fits.
And
Yes, it's
And I think it was interesting because, of course, I mean, we were only in year 3 or year 4, I don't remember, right? But it had been very hard to take the company to that level, and we were still not as big as we are today, right? But it's like, do we really want to start from scratch? Deciding on a name, which was very difficult at the beginning, create a logo, website, and start hiring other people, finding clients from scratch, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to do that. Like that sounds like a lot of effort.
And Alex, you're forgetting one important piece here. Imagine
Which
being
one?
5 years, like following the orders of a different boss.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is like losing your independence, right? And this is what makes MarsBased special, that we can take our own decisions. That if we don't like to work with a specific client for some specific reason, we can say no, we don't want to work with you because of this and because of that. But if you are acquired for another company, maybe you don't have that chance. And losing that, it means losing a lot of power.
No, and that's a very interesting point. And actually, the reason why we decided we would want to do that is because mostly it was a culture clash. So we couldn't be remote anymore. We couldn't be specialized in Ruby and Angular. We couldn't share our P&L and financials with our employees. We had to lose a lot of stuff. And what for, right? Potentially some extra money for the three of us. Not worth it, man.
Yeah, the philosophy of that company was very, very different than our philosophy. So I imagine that it helped a bit as well, taking this decision.
And I couldn't be working. Maybe I couldn't be working with a T-shirt, or just like I couldn't be able to wake up at 10 a.m. every morning. So I had to go back to more like regular schedules. But we really didn't want to go into that. Now let's go for the next question. The next question is very technical. So maybe Xavi want to start with this one, which is, we've always been known for betting hard on Ruby on Rails. We started as a Ruby, not Ruby only, but Ruby Angular in 2014. And Ruby up until recently has always been our only backend language, right? So are we still a Ruby on Rails powerhouse? And how much of the business is running on this nowadays?
Yes, of course we are. And we will continue being it. And this is because the same reasons that we had back in the day to choose Ruby apply nowadays. Ruby, it's a very good language with a very big community where you can find a lot of resources, documentation, a lot of third-party libraries which are maintained. And this is one important point, because you can find a lot of different languages and frameworks and so on. But then you need to take a look if the libraries that they are writing for these languages and frameworks are maintained or not. How big is the team maintaining those software? One of the good things about Ruby is that it has Ruby on Rails, and I will say that 95% of the web applications built with Ruby are built on top of Ruby on Rails. And the good thing is that there is a very big ecosystem around Ruby and Ruby on Rails. And this leads to having a lot of software available that is well maintained. And this is something that it's difficult to find in other environments. If you go into the PHP world, you will find that you have different ones, right? You have Symfony, you have Laravel, you have different kinds of frameworks. If you go to the JavaScript world, when you have a lot more of fragmentation, right? This is something good for a business like ours, because we can get senior in the framework and in the language. This also have some bad stuff that maybe everything is it's like around Ruby on Rails, and this can make some developers like wanted to try new things, right? And yes, there are some. I don't want to say that there are no alternatives to Ruby on Rails, because you have an AMI, you have other frameworks, right, and Sinatra and so on, but the vast majority of developers, of Ruby developers, are using Ruby on Rails. Said this, Ruby on Rails, it is now more or less the 50% of our business, okay? Because as you know, web applications have been evolving a lot on the front-end side, and JavaScript has been more and more necessary. We started with Angular. We moved from Angular version 1 to Angular version 2 and above. and we adopted React 2 for the front end part. And we decided that it was also a good idea to be able to provide backend development in JavaScript by adding Node.js into our tech stack. And now we have a very interesting team where we have people that is only focused on the Rails backend part. Then we have other developers which know a little bit of Rails, a little bit of React or Angular. We have some people who are only experienced in JavaScript frameworks, both front-end and back-end, or even only front-end or only back-end. And this is a good thing because it allows us to provide like interesting things to all of our developers. Maybe we have some Rails developers that they want to try to build something in Node.js. We can do that. Also, we have some clients that they prefer to have a web application written full stack in JavaScript with JavaScript in the backend and also in the front end. We can provide that. And it's been good for the company to have that. But I don't see Ruby on Rails disappearing from MarsBased anytime soon.
No, we love Ruby on Rails, right?
Yes, as much as we love other languages.
We love the philosophy underneath it and how it works and so on.
There's another thing that coming from the business perspective, right? And it just dawned on me that I don't remember the last time that we did a Ruby project that had an end date, right? All of our clients nowadays from Ruby, they come from a long way back. Like think of it, like Localistic, it's been like 3 years, Spin couple years, Nice 6 years, Zaptails 5 years. So it's like, and we still keep working for them. Whereas the JavaScript, that's more like the exception. And the JavaScript projects, they tend to have like a start and finish date. And Ruby is exactly the contrary. So I don't know why, but like I think that maybe, maybe clients, they value the expertise that we've got in Ruby on Rails. And if they find a good agency, probably we're fewer agencies like doing Ruby on Rails. And so they find a good one that works. They want to keep us in the loop. Like they want to keep us like busy forever because otherwise, I don't know. I just I thought about it like right now, literally it just occurred to me and.
Yeah, I guess that at the end, JavaScript frameworks are more mainstream right now, and therefore there are more companies starting new projects in JavaScript frameworks, and there is as well more developers doing JavaScript, right? So yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense that Ruby on Rails clients tend to stay longer and keep working with us, while JavaScript clients has more alternatives, right? More offer. They can choose. Some of them want to have their own team and whatever. But in any case, we have good long clients in each of these cases. So it's not something that worries me at all or anything.
Yes, also I think that it's it's a matter of the kind of clients that we're getting for each of the technologies, right? Because technologies has been on the road for so many years, okay? And what I said, yes, with Rails, it's been on the road for so many years, and most of the clients that we are receiving are clients which have their platform already developed. They have their ecosystem built with Rails, and they need an extra pair of hands, right, in order to continue developing their application. And those kind of clients are the ones that they don't want to risk things. If they find a provider that they like and that they value, they want to stick with them. And this is what's happening with us. This is the reason why we're working with Localistico, with Nice, with the clients that you have mentioned, because you have your business built in a technology, and you know what you want what you need, and you know what you don't want, right? And when you find something that works for you, you want to stay with them, right? And with JavaScript, what happens is that it's a more moving ecosystem, right? That maybe there is one client who wants to start an MVP or a business with a JavaScript stack because they have their own developers already hired, and maybe they want you to help them for a short period of time, and then they move on with their own team. Or there are like different scenarios. But if you remember, when we started with Ruby on Rails back in 2014,
Yeah.
we had more projects like the ones that you mentioned that were like short time projects where you started, you finished,
Yeah.
and then the client took care about those projects. So I think that it's
Yeah.
just a matter of how much time has been this technology like kicking off.
Yeah. In general, my feeling is that Ruby on Rails developers and companies doing Ruby on Rails are more faithful, right? Because they do Ruby on Rails because they love the language. And in the case of JavaScript, there is, of course, people that love the language, but there is also people doing JavaScript just because it's trendy, because it's popular right now, because it is what you have to do, right? That's a small difference between them.
But in terms of deal flow, for instance, I'm seeing that we've got maybe I think we have more Ruby, but maybe it's also because we cannot get all these projects into the company because we don't have normally we have less capacity for Ruby than for JavaScript because our Ruby developers tend not to free up that often, right? So, but I don't know. I wouldn't be worried about that. So if the person sending this question wants to create a Ruby consultancy, I think there's market for him, right?
Absolutely.
And speaking about technologies, I think we got time for another question that we also answered the other day. Is that, and that's also a technological one, Xavi. So, what are the recent technologies that you have seen giving you a best bang for your buck, and what have been the ones that have been that they have disappointed you the most?
Okay, let's start by the disappointing ones because we have partly.
This is where we lose followers, and
I know the answer, but
no, because we have partly answered this question. Before in this episode, and I think that one of the things that disappointed us more was the hybrid mobile app development frameworks such as Ionic or React Native at the beginning, and it's not because they were like bad technologies. It's for the reasons that you mentioned before, Alex, because they had this strong marketing slogans like saying, okay, you only need to know about web development and JavaScript in order to produce like top quality mobile applications. And this was not true, okay? And this is the reason why we got disappointed, because we really believed that we could do outstanding mobile application just by knowing JavaScript and web development. And we needed to invest a lot of time and a lot of effort into knowing how to develop native applications in order to succeed with some of the projects that we did. And yes, we succeed, and those were good projects, but we paid the fee, right? And it was not for free. As for the recent technologies, okay, that they are giving us like what was the sentence? Best
the expression the best bang for your buck.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So at MarsBased we have something which is, well, I don't know if it's common for dev agencies or not, but we tend to be very conservative when it comes to trying new technologies. Okay, because we have some clients running with specific technologies, specific frameworks, and because of that, we are not very eager on trying new things. Yes, we want to try new things inside the technologies that we are touching, but for example, nowadays there is a big buzz around functional programming, right, and functional programming languages and so on. And a lot of developers are eager to test those new programming languages, but we cannot do that because we cannot afford to develop software for clients based on what's trendy or what's recent or not. You know, this is very dangerous and risky for us and for our clients, because if that person who is learning this new cool technology and applying it into a project then leaves MarsBased, we will end up with a project that we need to maintain and we don't know anything about this technology at all. And this is the reason why we are quite conservative. But it is true that when it comes to, for example, when it comes to deployments and our development environments, this is one place where we can afford to risk a little bit. And for us, being able to Dockerize, to use Docker for all of our development environments, it's been like a blast because for some smaller companies, having to set up a client project on your own development machine, it seems like, okay, this doesn't take a lot of effort, right? But when you have projects that they've been running for years and you need to install this project again in your development machine and start developing, and maybe you need to lose like 10 hours or 12 hours configuring your whole environment is like spending a lot of time, right? And being able to create your Docker development environment, which will be the same between all your developers, and that it's not going to age bad. In 10 years from now, you will be able to run this development environment and do a fix or do a quick feature right away. This is crazy, and it's one of the cool things that we have that have given us a lot of money for the effort that we put in them.
How about the front end parts? Is there any? You want to answer this as well? Is there anything that you have seen that has disappointed you or surprised you greatly in terms of technology?
Not really, not a lot of things, but yeah, it's a bit weird to me the path that it's being followed in the styling of the projects, where right now there are a lot of frameworks and developers that code CSS inside components instead of having separated style sheet, which was what we learned to do at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
We were always told that styles needed to go, in a separate place than markup, and now it seems that all the the roads take to code CSS inside components. So that's a bit weird to me, but it's not. I mean, it doesn't need to be bad either. So it's just a bit surprising for a CSS guy like myself, right? And on the other hand, one other aspect of design that I would like to highlight is that new tools like Sketch or Figma have made that designing projects more easier than before, and it's also very surprising how those programs work right now and how you can just design a web application or a mobile application very quickly nowadays than before. It was much more difficult, no doubt. Yeah.
Perfect. I think we can wrap it up here. We got a lot of questions still to answer, but we'll have to do a second or third session as well. So, well, thank you very much. Really enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great.
Bye-bye. Thank you.